announcements yet. You got a question? All right. Give me just a moment on the announcements. We've got been having to update our flyers for some reason, but we've got our Easter flyer back there. Is Jesus dead, and does it really matter? And so we had to update the church location on the back. That's in the back. I don't think I have. Where is it? We still have some of our Easter word searches back there. Feel free to take one, make copies of it if you want. Those are back there. Then also, is Easter a mistake? It's in Acts chapter 12, verse 4. Bible has Easter in it. King James Bible does. And it's one of the reasons why we use the King James Bible rather than the ones that take it out. It's there for a very good reason. It's there to signify the Christian celebration of the resurrection of Christ, as opposed to the Jewish Passover that pictures the coming sacrifice of Christ. So, and then
the Passover is him coming.
Is a present, yeah, because he's the Passover lamb, as Tyndale put it in his translation, the Easter lamb, because Easter signified the resurrection. There's a false teaching. I know where it comes from and why. I used to believe it myself quite strongly. But the false teaching is that Easter is a reference to Astarte or Ishtar and the festival and celebration of that. It's not. It goes back in the English language, to the Old English, to the German, and its Germanic roots is a celebration of the resurrection of Christ. You know, bunnies and colored eggs and all that sort of stuff that's been brought into it. But Easter in the Bible was a reference specifically to the Christian celebration of the resurrection of Christ, not Ishtar. That's why it doesn't say Ishtar or Astarte or anything there in Acts chapter 12, verse 4. What day was Jesus crucified on? Got that there. It's got a timeline from Palm Sunday through Easter Sunday. So that's back there too. If anybody would like them, if we run out, I'll just make more. So that's the main things I wanted to mention back there. And we do have the thing online, so hopefully we're working fine with the online. We'll see how that goes tonight. Let's see, is there any other announcements that we need to make? Can't think of anything right at the moment. So, all right. Well, Chris was ready with a question back there.
What I was telling you about hearing on Station Gorka coming up here about Israel and Russia making some kind of pact.
Yes, it's interesting, and this I think does tie in with a number of things that's happening in the world, because we know from the scriptures a variety of things are going to happen in the Middle East. We know the influence of the United States is decreasing in the Middle East. The current administration has not been shown to be, shall we say, a reliable ally to Israel. Especially after that little incident in Afghanistan last fall. Yep. Well, after that, in fact, partly because of that, Israel has been reaching out to Russia, of all people. Seems kind of odd. You think, why would they do that? Well, they're looking at somebody outside of the Middle East that has power and influence. One of the things that happened was there was a port city in Syria that the Iranians were bringing in missiles and munitions and things to distribute to Hezbollah, and also some of them were winding up down with Hamas in the Gaza Strip, but Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Golan Heights area. And Israel had bombed the port and trying to stop the inflow of weapons. And the Russians had a presence there, and Israel basically said to Russia, you know, if you can get this under control, we'll stop bombing this port. Otherwise, we're going to increase the attacks on the port. And so what happened was Russia took over the whole port. That's now becoming one of Russia's largest naval bases outside of Russia in the world. So that's, yep, thanks to Joe Biden, that's where that happened. And in addition to that, Russia has built up a large air base in Syria. They station bombers there. They station fighters, jets there. They station troops there. And they've been building this up. Some people have looked at what's going on with the Russians going into Ukraine and said, it almost looks like this is like used equipment, like their second string. The B team, because it looks like maybe some of their better stuff is being pre-positioned down in Syria. Couldn't imagine why that might be, but and again in February, leading up to the invasion of Ukraine, Russia was conducting a major military exercise in the Eastern Mediterranean, and in Syria, mobilizing forces, they brought the greatest naval movement since the end of the Cold War from Russia around Europe and all the way around through the Mediterranean Sea, coming into that port in Syria. In addition to that, they brought a lot more aircraft and things in. At the same time, they were participating in a large joint naval exercise in the Persian Gulf with Turkey and Iran and China. So they're working with Turkey and Syria over here. They're working with Iran and China over here. And there's some interesting things going on that I've been looking at recently. We know the globalists want to establish a global order, and they've got various plans in place. But what's happening is that there's always been some cooperation amongst these different groups. But Putin, who has been to the World Economic Forum Leaders Summit and brought in and given all these briefings and training, as was Zelensky in Ukraine, and a number of other individuals like what's his name, Trudeau up in Canada, and different ones. But what has happened here recently is, while the World Economic Forum and Charles Schwab and all those people want a world government with Europe being the center, Russia and China have kind of decided, we don't want that. We want a world government with Russia and China as the center. You see the faction that's starting? Now, this is just speculation on my part, but go to Daniel chapter 7. And again, speculation. But I've been following these various things since the 1970s. And you got all these groups that come up with various world government plans. And quite often, they divide the world up into 10 regions. You know, you got these secular groups. They want 10 regions to control the world, 10 economic regions, 10 administrative regions, 10 political regions, whatever you want to call it. They come up with this number 10. Well, in Daniel chapter 7, we see, starting in verse number 15, Daniel's had a vision here, and I won't go through the entire vision with the bear and the leopard and all this. And the last beast I'm too far along. Let's go back to verse number 7. Daniel 7, verse 7. After this, I saw in the night visions, behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceeding, and had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it. And it had, notice there, 10 horns. Horns in Scripture usually signify power or sovereignty or something like that. You'll see in a lot of ancient pictures, whether it's something in tile work or a woodcut of some sort, you'll see a lot of ancient rulers used to put a horn on their head, like a unicorn horn, or you remember the Vikings with the horn coming out of their helmet? It signified power, you know, the strength of the ox or whatever, and the strength to rule and all. But he says he's got these 10 horns. And it says in verse 8, and I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom were three of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, this in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. Now, this little horn is generally thought to be a description of the Antichrist, the beast in the book of Revelation. And this would be the world ruler. But what I find interesting is as he's coming to power, the world is being divided, it appears, into 10 regions, 10 kingdoms, 10 economic regions, whatever you want to have it. See, all these globalist groups like to use this number 10 for some reason. Well, the Bible talks about there being these 10, but it's interesting that 3 of them are plucked out by the, they seem to be toppled in some sense. By the roots. And it's interesting. You look in verse 24, it says the same thing. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise. So there's your description right there. 10 kings, rulers, 10 rulers coming out of this last kingdom. Well, the last kingdom was Rome. Now we have coming out of Rome 10 kingdoms. Now, out of the Roman Empire. Now, some people used to say when the European Union began, the early days of it, the European Common Market, they said, well, it'll get 10 states and that'll be it, because this will be the 10 kingdoms. But that's not a world kingdom, is it? That's just Europe. This is talking about the whole world. And the European Common Market soon went above 10 nations. And then the European Union, more than 10 nations. And so that can't be what it's talking about. It's coming out of the kingdom, out of the remnants of the Roman Empire comes a world kingdom of 10 regions, 10 kings come out of that. And I've seen various descriptions, and one of them, China, represents one of the kings. And sometimes it's included with like Korea and things like that, and maybe Japan, but it's China. And then Russia's in another one. So this is, again, pure speculation. When the little horn rise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. So again, something happens to 3 of these regions. So here you have all the globalists coming together. We've got the global government in sight. And now all of a sudden, Russia and China are saying, oh, not so fast. We think we should be in charge. Could that be 2 of the 3?
I think the next verse after that is even tells you one that it really could be the Antichrist. He shall take great words against